skill acquisition. Task analysis and chaining. On a sheet of scrap paper, list the steps that must be completed to brush your teeth. Be specific and break down each process into the smallest possible steps. Here are the steps we will follow to brush our teeth. 1. Get out brush and paste. 2. Turn on water. 3. Place brush under water. 4. Turn off water. 5. Unscrew top from paste. 6. Put paste on brush. 7. Brush teeth. May need to be broken into many more steps for some. 8. Spit out paste. 9. Fill cup with water. 10. Swish and spit. 11. Wipe face. 12. Put materials away. Most people would think of brushing teeth as a single step in getting ready for the day and take for granted how easy this process is for them. For people with autism and other developmental disabilities, daily living skills may need to be broken down and taught one piece at a time. We call the process of breaking down a skill into small, teachable steps and ordering them sequentially task analysis. Using task analysis helps ABA professionals to obtain awareness of all the skills that go into a multi-step process and isolate the ones causing a client to struggle. Once a task analysis is created, the behavior technician has a simple, teachable set of steps to guide the client through acquiring a new skill. Now that a task analysis has been created, how do we teach these steps effectively? A behavior chain is a series of related behaviors, each of which provides the cue for the next, with the last behavior producing a reinforcer. Almost everything we do can be considered part of a behavior chain. For example, when you are reciting the alphabet, you start with A, then B, then C, and so on until the task is completed at Z. Each step serves as a cue for the next step. A chain is really a series of signals and behaviors. The completion of one behavior in a chain produces the signal for the next action. Saying G is the signal to say H next. Practically any complex behavior we do in the way of operant behavior is part of a chain or a multitude of chains. Eating, getting dressed, using the computer, counting, brushing your teeth, riding a bike, walking to school, and so on. Behavior chains are very important to all of us, as is the procedure for building chains, called chaining. Chaining is the reinforcement of successive elements of a behavior chain. If you are teaching your child the alphabet, you are attempting to build a chain. If you are teaching the tying of shoelaces, you are also attempting to build a chain. There are 3 chaining procedures: forward chaining, backward chaining, and total task analysis. Forward chaining is the process of teaching a multi-step task starting with step 1 and progressing until the final step is mastered. Using this teaching method, the client is initially responsible only for the first step in the task. The completion of that task is reinforced, and then the remaining steps are produced with the support of prompts. Once a step is mastered, a second step is added, and the reinforcement now follows the completion of both steps. The process continues until each step is mastered and the client can complete the entire task independently. If a task is extremely complex or the client is struggling to comply after being reinforced during forward chaining, backward chaining may be appropriate. Backward chaining is teaching a multi-step task by making the learner initially responsible for the last step and progressively moving toward the first step. The behavior technician models the entire process and then uses prompts to teach the client the final step. Once the final step is complete, reinforcement is provided. The client will become responsible for the final 2 steps once the final step is mastered. This process continues until the first step in the chain is mastered. Total task analysis is the final option for teaching multi-step processes. Total task is the way that adults naturally teach processes to children outside the ABA world. Total task analysis is teaching the entire process fluidly, instead of focusing on one behavior at a time. This method walks the client through the entire process repetitively, prompting when necessary. The repetitive practice eventually results in task independence. Regardless of the chosen method, data is taken during the behavior task, marking which steps were completed independently and which required prompts. Monitoring the progress made by the client is an essential component of all behavior acquisition programs. This is so the acquisition plan can be adjusted if data does not reflect progress over time. Discrimination training is another teaching method that is commonly used in applied behavior analysis. Remember, the ultimate goal of therapy is to help the client achieve independence. Learned skills must be under stimulus control for a client to be considered independent. Stimulus control means that a behavior is more likely to occur in the presence of one environmental stimulus than it is in the presence of others. In other words, the present situation itself alerts the client which behaviors are appropriate. Discrimination training helps the client with this. Discrimination training is providing one response to the client and two antecedent stimuli, but only reinforcing the response in the presence of one. To put it simply, clients are being taught to make choices by rewarding a behavior at the appropriate time and withholding reinforcement for the same behavior when it is not appropriate. For every task given during therapy, there is one discriminative stimulus, SD, and multiple delta stimuli, S delta. Discriminative stimulus is the term for the response that will be reinforced, while delta stimuli will not. We must teach the client to recognize which is the discriminative stimulus for an antecedent. Let's imagine trying to teach number recognition using discrimination training. For this example, the discriminative stimulus, or response being taught, is 3. The first step is to present the stimulus in isolation. In this case, the card with 3 on it would be presented and the technician would give the instruction, find 3. The response is then reinforced. When repeated, this process will teach the client stimulus control. Hear 3, see 3, find 3. Once 3 is under stimulus control, distractors such as 4, 8, or 9 will be added to teach identification among other items. Finally, the learned response is mixed in with previously mastered tasks to ensure discrimination is achieved. If successful, the client can now use this new skill to know when responding with 3 is appropriate. For example, when a school teacher draws a 3 on the board and asks, "What number is this?" the new behavior will be used because the child knows it usually produces reinforcement. Stimulus discrimination will be examined further in the discrete trial training module. In this module, you learn the different methods used to teach behavior in ABA therapy. Various prompts or cues are used to help a client give the correct response. Prompts are measured by intrusiveness, which means how helpful the prompt is. Shaping behaviors and fading prompts are 2 key skills that every RBT must practice. Multi-step skills like brushing teeth can be taught using task analysis and chaining to break the process down into bite-sized teachable steps. Future modules will return to these teaching methods repeatedly, and upon completion of this certification, these teaching methods will be extremely familiar. Take the assessment for skill acquisition to complete this chapter of the course.